Hi, everyone. Professor Chacon here for chapter 27, talking about commas. This one is a little bit longer than the other ones. Sorry about that in advance, but commas are everywhere. And so it's really important to understand the proper usage of commas. Well, let's get into it. Okay. What are they? They are essential punctuation marks in English writing. They help clarify meaning and improve readability. If you've ever seen just a wall of text with no commas or periods, you understand like how difficult it is to decipher what the person is trying to say. So in this presentation, we will explore the key rules for using commas correctly. So the first one is elements in a series. So that means using commas to separate three or more words, phrases, or clauses in a series. So if you're listing off something, basically. So the example, I bought apples, oranges, and bananas at the store. You want to do a comma after apples, after oranges, and then it kind of separates out what you purchased at the store rather than running it all together. It can also separate clauses, meaning things that are happening in a sentence. So, example 2, the dog ran across the yard, jumped over the fence, and chased a squirrel. So, if I just like eliminated the commas, it would be the dog ran across the yard, jumped over the fence, and chased a squirrel. Whenever you kind of naturally pause in a sentence, that's probably where some punctuation should go. And a comma is a good choice. Now, the final comma before the and right here, it's called the Oxford comma. It is like highly contested in academic circles. I am a huge fan of the Oxford comma because I believe that it just makes sense. If you are separating oranges and bananas and you want to pause there, which we normally do, then use an Oxford comma. Okay. Now, you can also use commas to start off intro phases or clauses. So like, however, we decided to stay home. After finishing her homework, Sarah went to the park. Although it was raining, they still went for a walk. You notice how there's like a natural pause right there, and the comma is inserted where that natural pause is. You can also use commas for transitional words and phrases. So some common transitions would be that's so funny. The little thing on the side. However, therefore, moreover, in addition, for example, you want to use a comma after those. Now, this first one is a great example of using a comma with a semicolon. The movie was boring, semicolon. However, comma, the special effects were impressive. So it's a very complex sentence because it has two different thoughts going on in it. And because it has two different thoughts going on, we use that semicolon to separate the thought, right? Because the special effects were not boring. The special effects were impressive. The team practiced hard. As a result, comma, they won the championship. So note that these words like help with the understanding of the sentence, but also it makes for more clarity in your writing. If you just said the team practiced hard, they won the championship. It goes back to some of our earlier presentations where we talked about mixing up your sentences a little bit so that it's not the same thing every time. Appositives are adding extra information. So an appositive is a noun or a noun phrase that renames or describes another noun. It gives more information. And you set off the non-essential appositive with commas. So non-essential appositives are ones we could take out of this sentence and the sentence would still make sense, like the first one and the second one. My brother, a talented musician, performed at the concert. So we could take that out and we could just say, my brother performed at the concert. Now, that is good. However, adding that inserted information there set off with commas gives us more clarity on your brother and why he's performing at the concert. New York City, the largest city in the United States, is known for its diversity. So you could just say New York City is known for its diversity. But by adding in that information, the largest city in the United States, it gives more kind of insight into its diversity. Now, essential appositives don't need commas. So an example would be my cousin John is visiting. You wouldn't say my cousin, comma, John, comma, is visiting because John is essential to the sentence. What about non-restrictive clauses? It's kind of the same idea, kind of the same flavor here. It's giving more information, but it's not essential. So if you can remove it without changing the meaning, it's non-restrictive. So an example is my teacher who loves science fiction recommends interesting books. If I just said my teacher recommends interesting books, it still makes sense, but adding that extra information in makes the sentence more spicy, and we love spicy. The old house, which was built in 1900, needs renovation. So you notice how we could just say the old house needs renovation, but by saying that it was built in 1900, we are giving the reader more specifics in building this picture. And we love that. Dates and addresses. So you want to use commas between the day and the year. So July 4th, comma, 1776. Use commas before and after the year if it's in a sentence. So on July 4th, comma, 1776, comma, the Declaration of Independence was signed. And that just kind of sets off that information so that it doesn't get all run together. And then, of course, we have rules for addresses. We don't just say Portland, Oregon with no nothing between it. It would be Portland, comma, Oregon. And then, of course, use commas before and after the state and a full address. And you can see the examples there. Now, these are not used as frequently in the kind of writing that we're going to do. A sip of water here. Okay. Now, there's some people who love commas so much they want to stick them everywhere. So you got to be careful about that too. So don't use commas between the subject and the verb because then you're just breaking it up and adding a pause where there really shouldn't be. The students completed their assignments. When I say that, there is no pause, so there should be no comma. If you don't put it before because we stayed inside because it was raining. Well, we don't necessarily need the comma there, right? We don't need the pause there. And then another incorrect example would be, it was cold, comma, we wore jackets. This is actually a comma splice, which was my worst enemy in high school. It's two different things happening. It's cold, we wore jackets. So we can't just stick them together with the comma and expect it to make sense. We need to add some kind of like transition word there. It was cold, so we wore jackets. And then there's the comma right there. So read the sentence out loud if you're unsure. And if there's some kind of pause happening, then you know, okay, I need to put a comma or I need to put like a semicolon. Hopefully you can differentiate between this after going through this course. Okay. That actually went a lot faster than I thought. So let me know if you have any questions about commas.